Hi, in case you don't know me, for the newbies, I'm Paul, and I'm here to give you an expert take on topics related to dating, relationships, sex, and inner game. So I'm going to be saying that a lot more for 2023, something like that anyway, because, well, there's too many people grifting advice out there, basically. There's too many non experts grifting advice. And that's only going to get worse. And so we need to differentiate the men from the boys, so to speak. And so I will be saying that uh, periodically. But good to have you guys on board, of course. If you're in the chat and you guys have questions, um, then throw them in the chat, but throw a super on there too so I'll see it. I got a lot of notes to cover, but I'll try to catch it either way. Shout out to my good friend Jaron. What's up, man? I'm glad you're here, dude. All right. So, yeah, we're going to talk about all of this stuff that's going on in the marketplace of the manosphere. All right. And what you're going to see now in 2023 is more and more people are going to be taking huge dumps and craps all over the manosphere. The very people that cut their teeth and built their audience off of the manosphere and off of red pill stuff will be dumping on the manosphere. That's what you're going to see. All right. And how do I know this? Well, I know this because of what I know that the manosphere is and what it isn't. Right. And also, same with red pill, although I think red pill will stay more neutral because people still want to grift the clout and information off of red pill content creators, namely like Rollo Tomasi and his books. I mean, Rollo is kind of his books, The Rational Male, is really the I want to call it a Bible, but it's really that's the instruction manual for red pill, right? And so I consider the red pill brand really belonging to Rollo, but then you'll have all of these other creators and people who can jump right on top of that brand. And so they'll use his content for clout and for you know and for credibility, right? Shout out to my good friend John, Modern Life Dating. Thank you on the haircut, my friend. Just got it done the other day. So, got faded up for this little talk. All right. So let's talk about what is the manosphere. What is it and what isn't it? All right. So first off, it's not anything real or tangible. All right. There's no consolidated group. And this is same with red pill. Red pill's ideas, right? But I mean, there's no consolidated group, there's no rules, there's no manual, there's no initiation system, there's no paid membership. I mean, there's paid memberships to different people's communities, but really nothing that would constitute like, hey, I'm in this group or I'm not. I mean, really, the ideas are often contradictory among those who get lumped into the manosphere or into red pill. Not everybody agrees. And so, you can't even agree on some of the basic principles in these things at this point of the game. I mean, now, hey, a long time ago when this stuff was just more or less developing in the internet forums and in the blogs, you know, um, it's that was maybe a different story, right? But now the grift has grown and it's grown into a marketplace, and I'll talk about that. And because of that, there now is no really consolidated message or group or principles. There's not even a consolidated set of principles that you can say belongs to the manosphere or belongs to even red pill at this point. If you're saying red pill according to Rollo Tomasi, you have, of course, books, and principles in those books, but and his blog too. His blog is great if you're not on there. But there's too many people claiming Red Pill now is a brand who grift off those things. They chop it up, steal, reproduce and duplicate, and they don't actually, the message isn't even the same, or is a bastardized version of that, right? So these things aren't in agreement. All right. So it's not a real thing. It's not a real place. So when, like, for example, Anthony Johnson claimed himself as the president of the Manosphere, right, the 21 convention guy, no one could contest that because that's not a real thing. It'd be like if I claimed to be the emperor of leprechauns on Unicorn Island or something, right? It's not real. All right. I was going to make a joke maybe I'm the dictator of Brock Lesnar lookalikes who sound like Steve-O or something, but that actually would be more real of a comparison than the Manosphere in of itself, which is really a fantasy land. So I don't give a crap. I'll do what I want, though. I don't give a shit. I don't care. And I'm not necessarily saying those guys are afraid to get sued by him. I'm not afraid to get sued by anybody. And I'm not even necessarily being critical of anybody in particular, to include him, to be honest. I'm just saying he says he's president. Like, who's going to contest that? It's a fucking fantasy place. It's not real. You know what I mean? And so there is a Wikipedia definition, though. And so let's look at this more, because a lot of my audience, due to algorithms, I know I literally get made fun of this every show, though. So, so might as well embrace it, right? Being the Brock Lesnar, Steve-O sound alike. But anyway, so we have a Wikipedia definition. Why is that good to look at? Well, because that is what the rest of the world who is not consuming like the content that you guys are consuming thinks about people in the manosphere. And red pills know better. You know what I mean? Not if they either don't know what it is, or if they do, they're going to think like this. And so the Wikipedia definition is: the manosphere is a collection of websites, blogs, and online forums promoting masculinity, misogyny, and in opposition to feminism. Communities within the manosphere include men's right activists, incels, men going their own way, pickup artists, and fathers' rights groups, in quotations. All right. So when I look at that description, according to people outside of this imaginary internet place that we call a manosphere, that doesn't sound good. That sounds like a place where you find a lot of really horrible and shitty ideas. Okay. Because that's what the mainstream thinking will make it sound like. All right. Is that it's just that anything that's manosphere or red pill is just horrible, shitty ideas. And so that's the impression that other people will get of it. And so I was kind of floored or shocked when I was doing some research on something else. And I was this is the incel thing, actually. And then I was looking up, like, so incel groups are considered, by some in the government as possible domestic terrorists. So I'm looking up this stuff, like, because of the mass shootings and this and that. So, yeah. And it unfortunately, guys who, generally speaking, people who are mass shooters are incels. That doesn't mean all incels are going to be mass shooters. There's only a small percentage of people, okay, that have ever done that, something like that. But a large amount of them, a high percentage of them are fit that incel category, right? And there's been a few that have been very vocal about it, and we know who those people are. And anyway, at any rate, so government organizations, government organizations will have tabbed anybody that fits into the incel category as being a possible threat or domestic terrorist or any of this stuff being considered hate speech. And then they lumped into these documents, red pill, manosphere, like all of this other stuff, like men's rights groups or whatever. Like, I mean, everything got lumped into it, which it pickup artists even, which I found insane because the idea of an incel is that you're involuntary celibate. You can't get girls who want to touch your pee-pee, and then pickup artists are doing the opposite of that. They're out just trying to get laid. So I find it like insane, but that's what the general world looks at it like, right? And so they have an impression of this. So it's already not a place that people generally, even that are considered in the manosphere, want to own that they're in, because of the negative perceptions. And those negative perceptions now are getting worse and propagated by content creators. I like to point out that I'm being complimented here about my stocky build. I'm a lot faster and stronger than you'd lead you to believe. So there you go. So I don't know where that came from. Thank you. I think that's a compliment. But at any rate, so it's and it's like there's so this is just what's going on, and a lot of guys have sought help on the is what happens is you seek help out on the internet. You get people are tribal, so you end up getting involved in having a sense of community, and people had a sense of community around some people had a sense of community around a red pill, around manosphere, and of course because of not being socially calibrated, right? From a lot of people who are in that space, you get a negative perception from people who are outside of it. Now, the feminists, of course, who see men's, rights even as a threat, okay, those types of feminists, they're always going to see anything a guy does to help himself as a threat. And they're going to want to, label that guy. But you know, that's like a small segment, right? There's all these other people that don't know anything about any of this stuff. And then they get turned off. And it's not turned off by the uncomfortable truths, right? That's bullshit. It's turned off by how you talk about it, how you present it, right? And so that's and how it's being talked about and presented. And so we'll get into that too a little bit more because the ideas themselves can be presented. I do it all the time in such a way where they may not agree because truth is uncomfortable, but it's a lot less divisive and binary thinking and bullshit. And you guys, some of you guys listening, buy into bullshit because you're dysfunctional. And so that's just the way it is. And so you guys are attracted to binary thinking and extreme statements and things without a lot of evidence or proof, all or nothing statements and things like that, things that people who are maybe not red pilled, but maybe don't know Evo Psych from anything else, but who still get laid sometimes and still have marriages and relationships and kind of do the normal thing. Those people aren't suffering enough to try to find answers, but when they hear a bunch of divisive crap from a bunch of broken men, which some of you are, unfortunately, and some of the guys in the space are, it's like, it's a major turnoff. They're like, fuck is this guy talking about? You know what I'm saying? It sounds ridiculous as if to a lot of these guys. And I don't blame them because it sounds ridiculous to me. And I know all about stuff and I know what's going on. And I just happen to have more empathy for you because I know where it's coming from. You know what I mean? Like I know why you're taking this weird stance, but it doesn't change the fact that it's a weird stance and it's not calibrated and it's based in traumatic thinking and a lot of bullshit thinking. And then of course you have no shortage of content creators who will continue to fuel that anxiety you have. All right. And so the other part about it is I got a lot of notes and they're all over the place. All right. So you got that Wikipedia definition, but What happened was what happened was within the last few years here is money got introduced more so into manosphere red pill spaces. Not that money wasn't always a part of it, but it got introduced even more so with the sale of ideas and information, usually whether it's books or courses or communities, right? And so what you end up with is, of course, with monies being exchanged now, the manosphere became a marketplace. So it went from an imaginary thing to a marketplace, okay, where money is exchanged for ideas and advice. That money is exchanged through ideas and advice through sponsorship and ads. So more followers and likes and views gives a content creator some money, right, from ad sponsorship and maybe product sponsorships that they sponsor. And then you have, of course, your courses, some of them quality courses, like mine, I would say, is a quality. John MLD does quality courses also. But then you have a lot of low quality courses, bullshit, gumroad courses, whatever, that are not worth your money, your time. But now they're a dime a dozen. They're now everywhere. And then, of course, you have your men's clubs, right? Your groups. Now, some of those groups are good and very useful, some of them not so useful. Okay. And so, and so now we get into, so you have this marketplace where money is exchanged. And with that, there's a low barrier of entry. There is no quality control because the manosphere and the red pill space is not, there's no certification you get. There's no entry into the club. And I'm not suggesting that there should be either. You're right. I believe in free market. However, because it's a low barrier of entry, you also have the reason why it's such a low barrier of entry is because you have a lot of unconsciously incompetent men. And that's some of you guys. I'm not insulting you by saying so. It's okay to be unconsciously incompetent. What's not okay is to be unconsciously and incompetent, but then arrogant about it. Because that's the part where I'm like, stop the bus here and get out of my bus. All right, get out of my car. All right, when you're arrogant plus unconsciously incompetent, that's what makes you stupid. You could have 200 IQ points or something. You could be the smartest person on earth. But if you're not competent in something, therefore you don't know the difference between good and not good, right? And you're arrogant about that, because you're so smart, all right? Then you're fucking stupid. Okay. That's why you're stupid. Okay. It's not because you're not capable of being smart. It's because you're choosing to be stupid. People choose to be stupid all the time through arrogance, all right, and through their egos. And unconsciously incompetent people do it the worst. And when you're dealing with things like, well, the sexual marketplace, dating relationships, the ability to mate or not mate, the ability to be able to have women in your life or not, okay, that is boils down to one of the biggest existential threats that men have, which is reproduction. It's a there's a more powerful drive to reproduce than to survive. And if you need you question that, just look at all the guys who will put their lives on the line for vagina. All right. So, like, really, it's just a more powerful innate drive, which makes sense, selfish gene theory. We want to reproduce. Okay, that's part of what we want to do as a species. And so the idea that maybe you can't or you won't or you're unmateable, that is a huge existential threat to men and to women too. And so that creates a lot of ego protection. That creates a lot of arrogance because when something is such a threat, people will turn and look for safe world theories. All right. I brought this up on a number of shows actually that I've been guest on. And so they will turn to safe world theories when safe world theory is an idea that somebody has to have or feels like they have to have in order to operate in the world without fear of death or anxiety. So some of those in politics, you see safe world theories. They have to believe in their political point of view, because if their political point of view is not true, then they feel danger, like there's danger in its instability, and that they're not going to be able to survive out there, right? It's not a conscious thing; it's more of an unconscious, innate thing. And so yeah, people, I mean, they want a safe world theory to explain the sexual marketplace to them, to explain mating to them in a way that protects their ego. And that is why they cling to unconsciously incompetent lines and storylines and advice. And so that is why the barrier of entry is so low to get into to dispense advice and offer some dumb course on Gumroad in the Manosphere or whatever, right? Because you don't have to know jack shit. You don't have to know anything. You just have to be good at marketing your bullshit. And in fact, competent people will have more marketing challenges than the uncompetent people. All right? Because that's because your market is a bunch of unconsciously incompetent men. That's who are gonna, if they were doing well, they wouldn't be looking for the advice, right? Now, guys who have some knowledge and some, you know, okay, I know I'm bad at this. You know what I mean? And let me, and I know kind of where I'm screwing this up, and let me figure that. That guy is going to be like a consciously incompetent guy. He's going to have less ego, and he's going to be a little bit better at sort of vetting out a good person to look at or good advice to take. You know what I mean? Somebody, of course, who's a little bit more game aware, they're still subject to having an ego problem, but and that would prevent them from advancing. You know what I mean? However, they can tell game recognizes game kind of thing, right? They can tell who's good to a degree, who's not. And how they respond to that, though, will depend on their market interests, right? But, that's what you have. So you have this low barrier of entry where people can market bad advice. That is what the red pill and manosphere has become. And so people, this is just market behavior. That's all this really is. And it's normal market behavior. As more and more people or products flood a marketplace, then those who were there before need to find a way to differentiate themselves. I'm no different. I have to do the same thing. We all do. The difference is I'll tell you about it. I have a lot of integrity. I'm honest about it. Right. So as more incompetent people flood a marketplace, you have the other, you have people giving unqualified opinions into the manosphere and into the red pill space. And then you have other people who are also unqualified, who happen to have made a name for themselves earlier, and it was a lot easier for them to do so in this space. Well, they now have to somehow differentiate themselves from the new unqualified people that are showing up. Now, of course, you have your qualified people, your experts, and I'll talk about what differentiates those a little bit later in our talk here. All right. But that's what you have, and so you have all these people finding ways to differentiate themselves. You know what I mean? And you're going to see more and more, you know, people are going to just like kind of crap on the manosphere red pill. And it's not without, I agree, like, to a lot of it. It's not without reason. So my friend, and he's been my business coach, in the past, and is Rich. Rich Cooper did a good video. I want you to go look at that on the Mana Swamp. I thought it was a good video. Now, I did have to laugh a little bit because he's like, well, I'm leaving the manosphere. Like, well, the manosphere is a market. That's like saying I'm leaving the economy. It's like, bro, if you pay taxes and you have to exchange, goods for currency, you're in the economy. You can't just say I'm not in the economy anymore. I mean, that's how that is, right? Like, I can't, but I get what he's saying, and so what he's saying is that, I'm better than these people in the manosphere, that are grifting. So I'm not going to compete for scraps in that marketplace. I'm going to go my own way, do my own thing, have my own brand. That's what Rich was basically saying, the practical side of it, which is good. And I agree with him. I mean, and Andy's right. He is better than those people, right? Because he has actual expertise in certain things like entrepreneurship. And he's a good mentor and he has a track record of mentoring men. And so he has that he has an expertise, whether, does he have an expertise in everything? No. Is he going to be better than some of the other individual experts who are more dialed in on certain things? No. Same with me, right? Same with anybody. But most of these guys now that are showing up in the space and grifting, he's basically saying I'm separate from that. And that's fine. And you're going to see more of that, you know? I never claimed to be in anything to begin with. So for me, it's like I came to the internet and found myself in spaces helping men. But the reality was I'm a qualified expert and was that before I showed up here. All right. And again, I'll talk about what differentiates the experts from the grifters. All right. Um, and so yeah, and then, of course, you got Ryan Stone. He talks about it all being pro wrestling. He is, big on exposing the grift. And that's part of his way of differentiating. He's differentiating by telling you, here's what's going on. Allie Drummond, I'm going to name drop her because she was talking about how some of this content makes you unattractive yesterday. But I actually don't know, or not yesterday, last time she went live yesterday. She told me on Twitter. I don't know because I didn't watch the show, but I mean, I'll go check her. She's agreeing, I think, with some of these sentiments. All right, about this stuff, and so whatever, but here's the thing. You're not in it, you're not out of it. You decide whether you want to claim it or not. And people are going to put you in the box or not. Like Rich Cooper can say he's not in the Manosphere, and he can make that a part of his brand to be countering those people, and that's fine. That's probably useful for him. I mean, really, the Manosphere or Mano Swamp needs him more than he needs them. And actually, with the amount of following he has. So he does well differentiating himself. So I differentiate myself because I just never claimed it to begin with. I take everybody on an individual basis. I'm not in a club or a clique, per se. Why? Because I'm an expert at the things that I do. I'm not an expert at everything, but the things that I focus on and I do, particularly things I talk about here, more so. Well, I talk about a lot of things that maybe I'm not an expert on here, just as a topic or subject matter, especially with a guest who, talk to somebody else who knows more than me. That's a good thing. But I mean, really, I'm when it comes to the products and services of me helping men out, the thing that I actually have for sale, that part I'm an expert in, and I get measurable results with those things. But that's another thing. So what you have now, what you have in the space that you can qualify these creators, because this is going to help you navigate this stuff, is you have your experts. So people are very skilled in certain areas and can help you in certain areas, and that apply to men, right? Men's issues. Okay, so you have your experts. Then you have your entertainers. Now, your entertainers are not necessarily bad. Some of your experts can be very entertaining. I would like to think I'm somewhat entertaining. I don't think I'm that entertaining, though, to be honest. But I mean, whatever. Some of them can be entertaining, but then some people are just entertainers. They're more entertainers than they are, experts at anything. And that's okay, right? Like Joe Rogan podcast. He's got a great podcast. He is not an expert on most things that he talks about on his podcast. He's an expert on certain things, but on most things he's not. He brings in a guest. He asks really good questions, and it's entertaining, right? And so the Manosphere red pill content, a lot of that stuff that's out there is really just designed to entertain. And it's somebody trying to get a part of that market share is all it is. But are they an expert? No, they're not. Now that's okay though. Like, I'm not saying don't watch it. You have to ask yourself if it's good for you or if it's not, right? If it's entertaining, if it's entertainment that's trash and negative and divisive and polluting your brain, you know, then don't watch it, right? But if it's useful to you, then that's great, you know. So I mean, again, you don't. But it's not necessarily bad to be an entertainer. But that's important to recognize that some people are just entertainers, while other people are actual experts. And then you have the grifters. The grifters are they're positioning themselves as experts in order to get market share. They're trying to speak from an authority that they don't have. And their only real goal is to get money and to get their egos rubbed. Okay. And so and ego is just as important as money for a lot of these people. All right. So that's something to keep in mind. And here's how it ends up going. A lot of these people, by the way, that are the grifters, they don't think they're grifters. A lot of them don't. They think that they are, I don't know. They think they're doing good work, but they're not. And I'll explain how that can happen. Some are just unapologetically, losers, that are grifting in the space. But some are, think that they have their shit together and they absolutely don't because they're unconsciously incompetent, right? They're just incompetent. And I'll explain how even when they get some level of competence, they end up behaving like unconsciously incompetent people. We'll get into that. All right. So I keep talking about this unconscious competence and incompetence thing. What am I talking about? So if you haven't heard this model, it's a good one to take a look at. You have, picture like, you can picture a quadrant, or you can picture, I don't know, it doesn't matter what you picture, right? I was going to do this on a slide, but I chose not to and just talk about it. But you have people who are unconsciously incompetent. Now, that's most people when it comes to the sexual marketplace. Your dad, okay, your big brother, all right, your blue pill friends, who's like, you never understand a woman, that person, all right, that's an unconsciously incompetent person, and so they they don't have any real advice. Now, some of them, well, a lot of times that person is like consciously incompetent. In other words, they know and accept their incompetence, but they assume everybody is incompetent. So that would be more like your dad who's like I say your dad, but that's typical dad advice of like, you never understand what a woman's thinking or whatever, like you can't understand women, just get married and do, just be a good husband and, whatever, that kind of bullshit. You know what I mean? Like just be a good do-gooder, that advice, because you'll never understand it, because nobody understands it. Nobody can possibly understand it. That's an ego protection, right? Nobody can understand it. You know, it's like fucking really nobody. Like, we have a whole, areas of science dedicated to this shit, but can't understand any of it. Like, okay, you know, so that's usually a consciously incompetent person, but they think everybody's consciously incompetent. What you get though in the space though is you'll get guys who they start to get some competence, right? And so they get some they were consciously incompetent at one point. They realized, okay, I'm not good with women. And they start figuring it out. Maybe there's some of the early guys in, married red pill Reddit or something or some forum or right or so suave or whatever, early pickup guys, okay, reading the game and all that crap, right? So they realize, oh man, I'm, or the dating coaches guys going towards, some of the guys that are out there doing dating coaching, that are not necessarily a lot of people in the red pill. We call them, purple pill coaches or whatever. So these dudes, right? I mean, they're trying to they're sort of trying to make themselves more competent because they realize they're incompetent. And so they start to get some conscious competence. and they're super excited, and they're just like, yeah, cool. I want, I want to go and teach men how to do this. And they get like excited about it, right? And because they unfucked maybe part of their life. I mean, a lot of their life still needed places to go, but they got some success. So then they're like, I'm gonna help dudes out, right? And so they start, and then they go, holy crap, and I can maybe try to make some money off of it too. Yeah, that's cool. Once they start doing that, but they're not to a level of expertise, they're not an expert, they're just competent. What happens is they realize in order to make money and to get people to listen to them, they have to appear like an expert, right? And so they're more now the ego steps in. And once the ego steps in, they stop learning. Okay. So here's what happens. You get a fear of loss. All right. So somebody who says, so some guy who couldn't get dates to save his life or whatever, just had a handful of really crappy girlfriends, learned some pickup stuff, learned some game. And now he's like, damn, dude, I got some competence here, right? He's more consciously competent. He's not quite at expert level. Unconscious competence is expert. That's a guy who can execute without realizing he's executing, and then oftentimes has to break down how he did stuff. Okay, that's how someone. That's one telltale sign a person could be an expert in a particular field. Is they don't even think about it. They just do it. But these guys, they're getting some good results, right? They've improved some areas. They're not experts, but they're competent, right? And they have to think about it and they have to work things out. But hey, you know what? They're figuring it out. What ends up happening is they start to get a market share because now the manosphere and red pill is a marketplace to make money now, not just it's not a men's club. It's not anything. It's not just an imaginary thing. And so it's a market, right? And so in that market, they start to fear losing in that market. When they fear losing in that market, what happens? What does everybody do? If you had, let's say now, there's a soda companies, right? Like, I don't know, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, Coke. What do they got to do now to be different when their product's not that different? And you're not dealing with something that is expert level, right? What do they got to do? They got to differentiate, you see? And so they have to find a way to differentiate from these other brands now that are trying to offer the same commodity that they're offering, because you're dealing with in the manosphere unconsciously incompetent people and people who are consciously incompetent, but basically more incompetent people than competent people. And the reality is that people want to feel better about themselves and feel good more than they want results. They want results, but they want it. What measures results for most people is feeling good about themselves. You know, a guy goes to the internet space to get answers because he doesn't feel good. His girl that cheated on him didn't feel very good. The girl that won't bang him doesn't feel really good. You know what I mean? It's like he doesn't feel good. And so he shows up and starts, searching on the internet. And by searching on the internet, he starts finding a message that appeals to his ego and that appeals to his sense of self or whatever, and what he's gone through, and maybe he identifies with, and then he feels better. And so I feel better about myself. And that's what causes him to continue to watch somebody. But unfortunately, when a guy's been burned and he didn't feel good, the reason he feels better about himself is because of trauma and damage and, you know, just bad experiences that he hasn't been able to figure out or overcome. And so now you have damaged men looking to feel better about themselves and following somebody who's going to appeal to the parts of them that are damaged, and maybe not in the healthiest of way, right? Maybe talking shit about women and shitting all over them or whatever is going to feel good to some of these guys who got burned by women. You see what I mean? But you got to ask yourself, is that attractive? No, it isn't. You know what I mean? That's unattractive to women. So guys gravitate towards stuff that feels good to hear. The blood sport, on the internet, two people infighting and drama, you know, um, uh, talking shit about people left and right, the smear campaigns, the talking about pop culture and bullshit, you know what I mean? Which some of that stuff can be useful for learning purposes and entertainment, but you get what I'm saying. The toxic or negative elements of that, they gravitate towards that because it makes them feel good. But they forgot one thing, that some of these things that make them feel good are sending danger signals to the women around them. They're unattractive. Walking around trying to be a super alpha male or whatever, and the way you guys talk and act, you look like shit. You look like a tryhard, and women don't like you. You see, that's the negative side. There's tons of people who have been helped, of course, by people who have good stuff in ways that they couldn't have been helped through therapy or other means. But there's this other segment of people, it's probably a larger part of the market, share that, I'm seeing a lot of shit in my chat here, but, anyways, you guys behave yourself in the chat now, or else I'm gonna have to start figuring out. I don't know who's misbehaving because I'm trying to focus on my points. But anyway, so yeah, this is this things that happen, and so this fear of loss in the marketplace causes the ego to kick in, and it causes guys to want to fight for a bigger part of that marketplace to not lose what they have. That's the danger. That's the danger. And that's what happens to non-experts. It happens to guys who are experts too, if they get caught up in it. But it definitely happens to non-experts, because how are you going to differentiate yourself if you're not an expert? If you don't have better shit than your competitors, because you're not an expert, because the commodity that's being sold is information and advice, right? And of course, action plans and guys implementing that advice and all that kind of stuff, right? So in that marketplace, how do you differentiate yourself if you're not an expert? Sound bites and simple little rules and bull stuff, that's not really gonna help you, help you differentiate, because people just, even if you originated it, people just gonna rip you off anyway. You see what I mean? And so, like, you got to, because that's another thing, is that everybody's ripping each other off because they're all the grifters. I mean, and I'll tell you, I know for a fact, even with I have a low in when you consider the marketplace, I have a low amount of viewers and subscribers, but a high amount of interest to other people who market better than I do, and who are willing to just say and do whatever it takes to get people to follow them. They copy my shit. I know this for a fact. I've been told this by individuals. I've seen my stuff, like when I introduce certain types of language and stuff, I see it showing up, so I know they copy my shit. They copy Rolo. All right. We all know that. You know what I mean? And so it's like, and it's okay. It's open source. I'm not mad about it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could just, um, you can, you know, take whatever I say and use it to use the information, because what I say is good stuff, and so use it to help other people out. That's fine. I'm not, it's the free information I give out on the internet isn't my necessarily my value or what differentiates me anyway. But that being said, though, like, people are building entire brands off of this, and just, if you notice, they're repeating each other, but they're then trying to differentiate in the material that they're stealing from each other. So how do they do that? Well, they get more and more divisive, because the things that are divisive, the things that are negative, the things that are outrageous, the things that are illogical and stupid, binary thinking statements, all or nothing statements, blanket statements, you know what I mean? Just all that bullshit, all of those extreme types of thinking and statements and stuff. All of that, and include the contradictions, right? Like, for example, like the monogamy is good, but spin as many plates as you can, and you should never commit until you have 100 girls under your belt. For example, like weird shit. When you look at it, it's like that's kind of weird. And that's why, because it's basic and there's no new nuance to it. It takes an expert to understand the nuance. Truths that are presented, but they're presented to fuel anxiety and to make men more anxious and to get guys on board to a He-Man, woman haters club versus go out and get laid and have girlfriends and get married and have a bunch of babies, right? Doing the cool shit you should be doing. Guys are getting into communities and into content that more often than not justify their lack of performance, right? And then, of course, how do I guys differentiate? Some try to be a hero. I'm going to make myself the product and say, be like me. Some are very good at that. I mean, that was, people mention Andrew Tate all over the place. I don't have a negative thing to say about him or anything. This isn't a negative hit piece on any individual, but he is a person who marketed off of himself and his brother, Tristan, as the product. I'm not saying anything bad about that. That is what it is. More like, be more like me, right? Like, I'm the role model, be more like me. That's one way of doing it. It's one way of differentiating. Calling out bullshit, that's another way of differentiating. I mean, everybody has their own way. You have the black manosphere where you have black content creators differentiating in their way versus the general manosphere, whatever, right? And all that stuff. Red pill turned into black pill. So somebody had to grift it to a more extreme angle with a lot more binary statements and all or nothing thinking, and had to call it black pill. Then you got a guy, I've heard of white pills, I've heard of all different pills now, right? And I can't even keep up, you got the PUAs and they have to differentiate. So what do the PUAs do? Yes, that's that. I consider my part of the black. I'm part of the black manosphere. I don't consider myself necessarily a part of or not a part of anything. That's the thing, because see, I'm actually an expert, so I brought most of what I have into the internet space. I didn't go to the internet space to learn about the shit I talk about. If that makes any sense? A lot of what I have, I brought into this space, and I have an expertise in certain things. Like, for example, this is a prime example of the difference between bullshit and expert. I did a video on body language, Thank you. I've been accepted. Thank you very much. So I've just been accepted into the black manosphere. Thank you very much. I should give a speech right now, maybe, perhaps. I don't know if I get like a coin, or a sort of award for this, but anyways. And so I was just indoctrinated or inducted, I think is what we mean to say. But anyway, so yeah, like, back to the points, right? It's like, these guys are looking to find ways to differentiate themselves, but without an expertise. And what ends up happening is it's then now a competition for attention in the marketplace. And that attention gives you gives you a space in the marketplace. It has people buy your shit, so a lot of that stuff has nothing to do with helping you. It has to do with beating algorithms. It has to do with saying things, that, would resonate with people. And a lot of times that means it's being divisive. A lot of times that means creating a conversation that's divisive. You know what I'm saying? So it's the experts don't have to do that. Now, sometimes they get caught up in it, though, right? Sometimes some experts do get caught up in it, but they don't have to do that. It's the majority of the people, the grifters, the entertainers don't really have to do that either. They can just entertain based off of it, right? but they're not trying to push necessarily like my advice is the only advice. A lot of them will try to sell courses off of entertainment, though, and you got to ask yourself, do I want to buy this entertainer's courses? Do I want to just be, is this person really the expert I should be turning to for advice, where I get into a community, for example, like my mastermind group where we do work for a year? Do you want to do that with somebody who has an expertise in certain things and who attracts other people who've, been there, done that, and who are pretty, strong at certain things? Or do you want to go with, somebody who's just an entertainer? You see what I'm saying? Like, and there's a big difference in the quality of actionable information and accountability you will get. There's no accountability in a lot of these little communities you get into. All right. But there's a level of that, when you get into somebody who's a good coach and a good expert. I say a level of it. I mean, you're still responsible for yourself, but you get what I mean. And so that's what we end up having. So like the thing I was going to mention, I got sidetracked. Like, for example, the whole body language thing. I'm a body language expert. I learned it from our government, things that the CIA and operators and different people and interrogators learn about tonality and body language. I learned some of that stuff, and then I expanded my knowledge in other areas looking into it. But I actually had to use that stuff, right? So like, I'm not saying I'm the best, expert in the world who's built a whole business around body language, like Joe Navarro, for example, has a ton of books on body language, right? FBI guy, right? But but it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm still in less than 1% of the world, that of anybody that it would know about this stuff. And then you had the internet grifters drawing lines on everyone's photos, thinking they're body language experts, making mistakes all over the place because they don't know what the fuck they're doing. And so I did a video and I debunked that, showed you guys what I'm talking about. And that's what I mean. You see, just that right there is a practical example. Guys, idiots drawing green. There's dudes out there and coaches that have built entire businesses off of their fake ass credibility from something that they don't know anything about. They're incompetent at recognizing body language cues. They're giving out bad information. They're giving out wrong information, and they're fucking people up because a lot of guys then get this information and they get counter signals. They get wrong signals, or they misinterpret signals, or they give out bad signals to women, and then they fail with women, or they get anxious in their relationships because they're missing key components to like reading their girlfriends. I mean, and it's exactly the problem, right? It's like everybody's an expert online. Yeah, okay. Until you're not, you try to apply the information. So I finally got pissed off one day and I did that video. And, you guys can go back and watch that video and see the difference. There's some key principles. Like, we're talking like the first day of fucking class shit that most people are missing because they never had any training in this stuff. They're not fucking experts. Okay. So, and what it ends up happening is you end up having a little bit of information that's dangerous and it doesn't help you. And guys focus on that stuff and they ego invest in those things. The amount of ego investment in drawing green lines on people, I just couldn't believe or understand or any of that stuff. I see a question in the chat. If you're wondering where I've had some of my stuff, go to my website. Okay, I got a bio there. Apexmindset.net, or PM me or DM me or something. I don't want to distract from what we're doing. But but at any rate, so it's like now expertise is not just credentials, though. I'll get into what expertise is. Actually, maybe we can spin into that right now. Okay, is what's the difference? Like, how do you know the difference between an expert or not? Okay, well, so first of all, an expert is a subject matter expert as demonstrated by the information that they're producing. So an expert is a expert in a particular subject, okay? And they demonstrate their expertise by producing information. A degree or a certification is not a proof of expertise. It is evidence of expertise. But for example, David Buss is not an expert because he just has a PhD. He's an expert, in my opinion, because of the work he has produced, his papers, his books, his teaching other students who have produced papers and books. So that guy's a powerhouse in the evopsych world, okay? And so he is an authority. He is an expert in evolutionary psychology and male female dynamics because that's what he's studying throughout evopsych, right? Does that mean he knows everything? No, right? Of course, he would never claim that. That'll get me to another point in a minute. But he's an expert. Is his expertise because he has a degree? No. The degree is good. It's important. It allows him to produce his his research because he's more of a researcher and instructor or teacher. There's a difference between a researcher and a coach or a therapist or something like that too. Coaches and therapists, by the way, are not, they're just different. They're not less or more than a researcher. So you got to keep that in mind. Okay. So you have, though, the education is only a small part of it. They have to produce something. Okay. And it could be anything. Like I consider Rollo Tomasi is an expert. He has produced a number of books that have, you know, found themselves in that have made kind of provable theories, if you will, and hypotheses in his books. And, these can be discussed. People can attempt to refute them or people can confirm them. But he has, from his writings, he's, you know, demonstrated his subject matter expertise by that stuff. And he's not a doctor, right? He's not a doctorate or anything like that. And so that's one part is the education. But you could spend 20 years educating yourself and not necessarily have a degree in certain things. I mean, there's certain things, not necessarily what we're talking about, but like trade school, things like that. I mean, there's a difference between, an expert at, something I consider like a journeyman or an expert in something like electrician or a drywall guy versus a guy who just finishes a certification or just starts working as an apprentice. You see what I mean? And so you can tell based on what they're producing, and that's the point. And so that's one part of it. Another part is that an expert will demonstrate unconscious competence. And so, in other words, that expert knows, like they'll just be competent in a topic, whether or not they're you know giving advice or actioning it in their own life, and you'll see them do that, and they'll do that without having to think about it too much. And so you look for that sort of evidence, and that's you won't, that can be faked. Like receipts can be faked online. So receipts actually don't mean shit when you're talking about their own personal life. But when they talk about stuff or someone asks them a question or whatever, and they answer with expertise and competence, and it's not just some generalized all or nothing statement, right? Then that's how you know you're talking with somebody that might be an expert. An expert doesn't claim to be the end all be all and an expert in everything. That's really important. All right. There's certain things I'm an expert at and certain things I'm not an expert at. I don't consider myself, for example, an expert in business, you know? And so it's like I have a business. I've run businesses before. I've done them successfully. Still don't consider myself an expert. I think there's some billionaires out there that consider themselves an expert. They got more receipts. I can give some general advice on entrepreneurship, sure, but I'm not going to come out with some sort of course or book anytime soon, of course, especially if it's something like I'm not even in. Like, I'm not going to do a course on how to start a manufacturing company when I've never, you know, really done anything like that in manufacturing. I've never started a business in manufacturing. How could I start a core, and this is what you deal with though in this low barrier to entry manosphere red pill space is people have courses and shit, but it's the equivalent of having a course on how to start a manufacturing company. And then you ask the guy if he's ever worked in manufacturing and he says no. Like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? So it's like, that's things that, unfortunately, when we're dealing with a softer science that anybody sort of can claim expertise in, and nobody is going to bat an eye because so many people don't know anything about it, right? We'll get to some super chats here. So I want to let you know that we call this epidemic the shame, blame, and explain hustle, where they criticize the OnlyFans woman and never the subscriber because they want the money. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. You know what I mean? And that's it though. It is a money grab, isn't it? And I'm not against people making money. It's just you want to provide value for that money, and that's my problem. A lot of people are not providing the value for it. Thanks for the advice, and yeah, no problem, bro. Thanks for the comment, man. You're good. We good. It's all good. So, and thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for the compliment there. Your content goes way deeper into psychology than anything I've seen. Well, thank you very much. And when you're dealing with somebody who has an expertise in certain things, I've been doing this for over 20 years now. I mean, going back to when I first had undergrad courses in psychology, God, how long ago that was, my early 20s. Like, did some grad school in psychology, got certificates, certifications, EMDR therapist, different things like that. Whatever, I'm not the, most prolific psychologist in the world or anything. I don't even operate as a licensed therapist, but I have education under my belt. I've been doing this for 20 plus years now. I brought what I know to the red pill space, to the manosphere. That's a difference, Let's start naming experts like, Sean Smith, for example. He's a doctor in psychology, but it's not his damn degree that makes him the expert. He produced a book that helps give actionable advice to people. He's helped a lot of men out. He's gotten results from that stuff too. When he speaks with authority. It doesn't matter. I may not agree. A lot of professional and experts won't always agree. Okay. But may not always agree with, let's say, everything he might say, but he's another one who's pretty negative on the red pill and space sometimes, but that's fine. You know what I mean? He's got his expertise in certain things, right? Dr. Glover is another one, right? No More Mr. Nice Guy was pretty damn good, but his game advice, I don't think is as good. He's not a game expert. You know what I mean? So here's another example. Dr. Jordan Peterson is an expert in certain things, but not in others. He is not an expert in relationships, period. I know he has a book or course on that stuff. I don't agree. If I would love to sit down and debate that with him, but he wouldn't do that with me, I'm sure. But he's an expert in psychology, though, and he does have his expertise for sure, but it's just not that. And that's what I mean, though, he crossed over into that to sell something. And that'd be like me crossing into something that I'm not necessarily an expert in to sell it to you. You know what I mean? So here nor there, right? But he doesn't know he's not an expert in that. I'm sure he thinks he does. And this gets to, what I mean here is about the biases that we end up getting. So, into some more stuff here, though. All right. So, more so, an expert is not going to be, I already mentioned this. Number 3 here on my list is an expert isn't going to claim to be an expert in everything. That's really important because you can't be an expert in everything. They're going to they'll know what they're good at and they'll know what they're not good at. And you'll see a level of humility there. Because if you're an expertise in something, that's a good sign anyway, that you're not trying to act like you're the expert in everything. And I'm not saying some can be just egotistical and they do it anyway, but a good sign is, that you stick to what you know. And when you don't know something, you're asking questions or you're conjecturing, right? Or you're not afraid. And in any sense, you're never afraid to be wrong. And that's truly important. But I'll get to that one too. The most important thing, though, as far as expertise is concerned, particularly if you're somebody who claims to be a coach or is offering a product, is do they get results? Do they get results for themselves? Do they get results for their clients? And are those results better than if the clients were going to take somebody else's program or to be off on their own? That's the best way of differentiating is receipts, but not receipts from yourself, because that can be fabricated. Although I'm not saying yourself isn't important, right? Like if your life is falling apart as a coach, and but you're advising men while you're living in in a van down by the river, kind of a situation, that's probably not good. That doesn't make you look like much of the expert if you can't action certain things in your own life. But that's not independent of itself, though. I mean, Jordan Peterson had a prescription drug issue and problem and health issues. Um, you know, not has made mistakes in his life, but he has still an expert in certain aspects of psychology. It doesn't take that away from him. So you can't always like look at a person's. Sometimes people are experts in things and they don't always manage parts of their lives too. That's a reality of it. You know what I mean? Because but they're well studied on their subject matter, and the advice that they could give, or the information that they could give, that if action would work well, like that still can be there. You run into that. You do see that. So you can't necessarily look at a person and their results in their own life. It's a good measure, but it's not the best measure. The best measure really is to look at what people are saying when they take and action that information. You know what I mean? So that's the best measure of is producing results, and not just brainwashing people into thinking they got results because they felt good, but actually their life looks fundamentally different, after applying right some of the advice that this person has to say and learning from this person. So that's probably the best measure of expertise more than anything, because there's plenty of doctors and licensed therapists and everybody else, people with paperwork and credentials out there who don't produce good results. There's more of that than people who do produce good results, quite frankly. And so that's what you need to look at. And then the last thing is, somebody who's an expert is they're still learning. When you become an expert in something, you freaking realize how much you don't know, how much there is to learn yet, how much uncertainty there is. You become comfortable with uncertainty, and so that's what happens when you're an expert in certain things, is you realize shit, like there's a lot I don't know. And you're okay with that, though. Like you're comfortable with that because you have enough information but by knowing what you know, you can navigate it better than anybody else. You know what I'm saying? But you're not arrogant. It's humbling when you become an expert at something. I mean, you can be confident, sure, but you're not arrogant. You're not you don't fall into unconscious incompetence through your ego when you're an expert. It's harder to do that. I'm not saying it can't happen, but it's harder to do that, because what happens is you realize how much you don't know. Anybody who has stopped learning and stopped producing, especially when it comes to the sexual marketplace, human and social dynamics is a complex study and subject matter. If anybody says, "Oh, there's everything you already need to know. It's super simple. It's out there. Buy my course, buy my book," they're not an expert. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. You know what I mean? Because the reality is there's a lot of complexity to the human mind and to how we communicate with each other and how we execute our sexual strategies. If it wasn't complex, then it would be simple and everybody would be doing well. Okay, but we're not. People are not doing well by and large, and because it is complicated. Some things can be simple, sure, and simplified, but when you put it all together, there's a lot of shit there. So an expert is going to take a complicated thing and assume he knows everything and stop learning. That's never anything that happens with an expert. So those are some things that you can use to define or figure out, an expert. You know what I mean? And so um now let's look at the problem here. When unconsciously incompetent people will buy into the incompetent grift that is marketed well. All right, that is the problem we're dealing with here. Is when you can market a grift well, by regurgitating just watered down bullshit and things that are stealing other things that other people already said on the internet, but not knowing how to properly apply it. It's like a shiny object thing. People will become, because people want to feel better. They're not trying to necessarily, they want to get results, but their measure of results is really about their feelings, majority of people. And so it takes some time. Like a lot of times someone will feel better following a certain content creator or buying a product. And then 6 months later, they'll realize I'm not any better off. And they'll analyze their own behavior and they'll go, you know what? I did execute everything I was told from this coach or from this program or this person. And it didn't work. And then if I say that it didn't work, then I basically get insulted about it. Like, this person's a grifter, right? It could take somebody 6 months, a year to figure out someone's a grifter that they've chosen to follow, because once they follow a person, then they usually will bias themselves into that stuff and because their choice of following them is because it feels good. The reality is, though, the coach that makes you not feel so good, but not in an anxious way, but in a way where you have to challenge yourself, that's the person that you want to actually look towards. If somebody makes you uncomfortable or pisses you off, even, that's coaching you, that's probably a good sign, not a bad one, because that means you're being challenged. All right. So a solid coach or will challenge you and challenge your beliefs. And whereas the grifters are going to make you feel good or make you feel shameful for being less of a man in some way. And so, that's another tactic is shame. They'll either lean towards shame, you're a loser, you're fat, you're stupid, you're broke, buy my program. Or and then once you buy the program, it's like, yeah, see, you're not as big of a loser because you're with us now. But then you turn around a year later, there's no fucking results. Now, listen, some people might use some of this sort of stuff that are actually good coaches. I'm not saying it's only shame tactics, but might say, like, sometimes you need to hear, you're kind of a loser right now, or you know what, you need to lose some weight, or you're fucking broken. That's why girls don't like you. Come on now, get it together, right? That's okay to say if the solution actually helps them get out of that problem. If the solution doesn't help them, just shitting all over somebody and shaming them into buying your stuff, and then just try to make them feel good afterwards because you're in the club, that's not good, right? That's a sign that you've been grifted. And so experts don't necessarily do that. Experts sometimes struggle to find, to be sexy, you know what I mean? To find something that sells well, because they're just busy solving problems. And sometimes what's practical isn't the most attractive thing to people when they're buying into marketing, right? I got a super chat here. Thank you for that. I'll read this one. The late Kevin Samuels was the main person who pretended to be an expert and started this model shaming, blaming, explaining to women on how to act towards men, and does not teach men to be different towards them. Oh, okay. I'm not going to say a lot of opinions about people here. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not like I'll let you guys have your opinions on people, right? But I mean, I'm not going to sit here and I'm not here to shit on anybody. All right. But I am going to shit on what is happening, and you can decide. If there's somebody out there that doesn't like it because their brand depends on it, all right, that's how I feel about that. You can go fuck yourself. You know what I mean? If you're not putting out good stuff that people can action and do well with, and I'm just exposing that, and you're mad at me for it, then go fuck yourself. Like, I'm not talking about anyone specifically. All right. And I don't have to. There's so many of them out there. Okay. And now some of the times too, though, you don't want to just label somebody, because again, like, like, I mean, someone says, like, just like using some shame tactics in marketing is not necessarily a bad thing if it's truthful and it helps guys get onto good information. Where it's a bad thing is when the information doesn't help them. It's not good. The advice doesn't really do anything for them. And it's really more about their feelings and feeling bad about not being in the group and then feeling good when they're in the group, but not actually changing anything in their lives, right? It's when nothing happens for somebody. People are, it's like when you're crapping all over someone, but they don't have anything actionable. Anybody can shit on anybody. Where's the actionable advice? Do you know what I mean? And so that's what I mean. But again, if somebody's mad at me for exposing the grift, well, I'm sorry about your luck. I don't really care, you know. But let's go back through my notes here. So like, yeah, so and I give you just an example, like my story of kind of like how I got into where I'm at here is like I I had an expertise in certain things, and when it comes to relationship dynamics, anything from dating and pickup to relationships and handling conflicts, problems, and having frame, right? A long-term relationship. These are all things I had studied. I'd helped out, you know, quite a few people in the military, right, with their problems and their stuff before I even came on the internet. And so these were things that I was passionate about looking into doing, right? And I just wanted to do more of. And I just kind of found YouTube as a space to talk about things. And then with that though, I was using YouTube actually, and I was using some of that stuff to promote my real estate. But I had a real estate company, and so a partnership, and we bought and sold houses, transactional stuff out in Michigan. And so like I was looking to expand my eyes and get eyes onto my brand. Um with that. And that's what got me into making videos like Facebook Live and stuff. And a lot of that shit was about real estate. And it wasn't even on my channel. It was on a different channel for the company that we had. And they were okay, whatever. I didn't do great with it, but I did all right. And but built this real estate company, and at the time I was wanting to branch into something different to diversify what I was doing. Real estate just that by itself wasn't really what I wanted to do. And I had all these skills in the stuff in psychology, but I just yeah, so I am also in the military too. So that's another thing. I was in the I was in the military for a long time. That's where I learned a lot of stuff. Still am, still do stuff for the National Guard. I'm just laying low now. I was in, you know, infantry as well as special operations community for a bit, and then now I'm just chilling, chilling as National Guard guy. But I mean, I do stuff if I get called to go overseas. There's possibility of using my qualifications and filling in a space over there for certain things, which is what I did last tour. But I keep that stuff vague because I'm still in, technically. So I'll talk a lot about that. I got off of active duty and started a real estate company. So that's what happened. I was active for a while. I went active for a while. And then when I got off of that, I was just doing National Guard, and I got, into real estate as an option after doing several deployments and other stuff. Right. So to answer that question, so real estate happened. I started a business. I did pretty well. I mean, we had a few employees, 6-figure income at after a point, not right in the beginning, but like after a point. Had a team of agents. I mean, it wasn't too terrible. So I had that entrepreneurial experience after the Army and doing part-time stuff, so I've gone back and forth between full-time and part-time Army, all right, between reserve status and National Guard and active duty. But that being said, and it usually is deployment related because you can volunteer for a deployment, right? And then they'll send you. So at any rate, I was wanting to expand my business, and that's actually part of it. I don't want to get into that part, but that's a true story. Um, yeah, because I mean, there's a point like during the real estate building where my freaking marriage fell apart. I was living like a nomad, a lot of savagery, but that's whatever, man. That's a whole another thing. That's not what I'm talking about. I want to skip to the part where I got into like a space, right? So I was looking at doing something creative on YouTube, and I thought about like I could talk to our entrepreneurs And, maybe like I was interested in like cars and shit like that. Maybe we could make it revolve around cars because cars are cool and all that. I didn't have anything cool myself. So I thought about this and I got the idea because what was his name? Comedian has coffee and cars. I forgot, off the top of my head, what's his name? Jerry Seinfeld has coffee and cars. So I thought something like coffee and entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs and cars, that would be cool as a brand. And so I was like, maybe I'll start a channel doing that. You know what I mean? And have an entrepreneurs like kind of thing, right? And so then I was searching to open up, see if that would be something. I saw Rich Cooper's channel, Entrepreneurs and Cars. I'm like, who's this bearded, bald-headed bastard who stole my idea? Of course, he didn't steal my idea. He had it before I did, and he had been around for a little bit. He was not as big as he is now, though. This is like 2016 or something like that. And so I was like, you know, so I was like, all right, well, okay, so let me check this guy out. And then I was like listening to him. I'm like, hey, this guy's pretty cool. I actually like his entrepreneurial stuff. I like his stuff. And so then I ended up joining his community. And so that's what happened there because I wanted entrepreneurial help. Because I'm like, this guy's like, you know, but before I even joined his community, he did this like announcement that he's now red pilled. That was like one of the videos. He's like, I just became red pill or something. I don't know. It was like around 2016, I think, if I'm remembering the dates correctly. And that's when he first like met Rollo, first read The Rational Male. It got suggested to him by another business guy. Anyway, this is before I even entered the community. And I had The Rational Male in my reading list, but I hadn't looked at it yet. And I had all this game and other shit already. All right. And so I decided to read his book. I went, yeah. Now, most of his book I already knew. There were just different ways because I had studied Evo Psych as well, right? I just have a lot of education on top of this. So there's like a lot of education and bringing to the table. So I've been studying Evo Psych for a long time. Strategic pluralism was the whole alpha, lays, beta pays, right? Alpha fucks, beta bucks, whatever you want. That was all, he just had a way of explaining topics that existed in evolutionary psychology, but in a way of making it kind of practical for a person to follow, So I was like, damn, this is pretty cool. This is pretty decent stuff. And so, I was like, cool. That's good, right? And that's introduced me to that. And then I joined Rich's community. And then from there, I was writing and helping dudes out with relationship problems. I was still doing this in the context of the military. And it all just kept going. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, you're being autistic, Moose. I have to put you in timeout. If you're just going to sit there and repeat yourself over and over again, I'm not sure. You know what I mean? That's like a Tourette syndrome thing, bro. You can't do that in my chat. And so, anyway, um, yeah. So it's like, yeah, whatever. That's how I got started. And then, I jumped into producing stuff. I was in Afghanistan making videos on this channel. You can see some of those videos and I had somebody, basically had a couple things happen. Like I had a men's group I was in, like it's just a small local one, right? With a few friends. It turned into yeah, yeah, that was pretty funny. That was good times, right? Well, yeah, because of the way my life was and a lot of things I experienced, but the advice that I dispense, it's good, right? And it's good because I've been doing this for a long time, long before I came into the space. And I didn't come into a space. I just kind of showed up, was doing my thing, and then here's a space now, I guess I get associated with, you know? And so like I never said I want to get into this manosphere and what's the state of the manosphere. I always thought those were weird discussions to me. I don't know what the fuck is that. Like, you know what I mean? I just never cared about it. I don't watch a lot of content creators, to be honest. I'm bringing my own stuff to the mix. I mean, when I do watch stuff, it's curiosity, and it's not to say that other content creators aren't good. It's just I don't have that kind of time all the time to watch everybody. So it's like then the red pill thing. I always saw the red pill really as like Rolo's thing. You know what I mean? And then guys like Ryan Stone, well, he was in it way into the forums, right? Like I was never in those forums, so I always felt weird, like saying I'm a red pill guy, even though technically, yeah, like my ideas align with the red pill stuff, and my friends, in that I produce content with, like in Rule Zero, are like red pill guys. But I don't like consider myself like I want to brand myself as this red pill person and go out and be the red pill, whatever. Like that's all branding and marketing that I just don't. If you notice, I really don't participate in that much. I mean, it's if I'm doing something with red pill guys and they brand it that way, that's cool. If not, then fucking oh well, right? And so it's I have an expertise on certain things, and that's what I bring to you guys. I don't care if there's a space for it or not. The fact of the matter is, people need help in their relationships and being more attractive to women, and that's what I bring. And whether I don't consider myself a part, like it would be weird for me to be like, well, I'm leaving the manosphere. Like, I don't even know what that means. It's like saying, again, I'm leaving the economy. I'm not associated with it to begin with. I don't really associate, like, I'm not like touting myself as I'm the red pill truth bringer of the internet. Like, I just provide actionable shit for people to follow so they better their lives. That's it. Like, that's what I do. And there's certain things that I do very well at with that. Then there's other things, that I'm learning about still. Well, I'm learning about all of it still, but that's the difference. And so, an expert doesn't need to associate with a space. Doesn't need to. I mean, they can if they want to, but they don't need to, unless they own that bitch. And they have actionable stuff and they can do what they want. And so, but here's the thing. The reason why this is fucking your guys' game up though is because you guys are consuming all the stuff from a lot of non-experts. You know what I mean? And that's okay. Some of the entertainers are non-experts. It's all right. But you're consuming a lot. You're consuming a lot of stuff from people that, and some of them have big followers too. So I'm not just talking about the small guys. Don't let popularity be your basis for whether someone else is knowledgeable or not. Main thing is, if I follow this advice, am I going to end up in the right spot? That's what you got to look at. But see, because of all the non-experts now that claim red pill, that claim manosphere, all right, they are more and more divisive, more and more bullshit, more and more off in left field with their thinking, that they bring this stuff to you guys. They talk about it. And if you follow that and listen to that and consume too much of it, you become now awkward and uncalibrated to women. You're now busy with all of this bullshit in your brain from people repeating, extremist, anti-woman fucking bullshit, just bullshit, like we can have a discussion about notch counts, for example, but then you guys take that discussion and that judgment to women in your lives and not in a way that's productive, but in a way that's unproductive. You know what I mean? You guys go explaining it to girls you're trying to date. You guys, are the ones who say, well, I don't need to know about boundary setting because if she cheats, I'm just going to get rid of her. Like with my last course that I opened up, you know what I mean? It's like, good, then please don't take my course because you'll be a pain in the ass and I don't want to have to deal with you, it's the arrogance. You know what I mean? And so, and unfortunately, yes, this is true. My friend Jaron is right because, yeah, the reason that happens is because it resonates with the other people who are unconsciously incompetent. And so when people say incompetent, bullshitty things, other people who are incompetent and bullshit are like, yeah, that sounds right. And the point is, they just bring this awkward, goofy behavior into their dating lives and with their women. And they forgot the most important thing, which is that you got to be attractive. Being hyper obsessive and having a hyper obsessive need to overanalyze everything through like this red pill manosphere negative bias that some of you guys have is unattractive. Women find that gross. Women find that, you know, it's just they're gonna naturally feel that way because you're gonna act socially uncalibrated. You're not gonna act in a way that's attractive. There's being attractive, being seductive, knowing how to seduce, and then there's not. And the basis of any of this shit is seduction. And you guys in the manosphere and red pill spaces are all in your heads trying to overanalyze and trying to pick stuff apart and jerk off to it or whatever. A lot of you guys are doing it based on traumatic thinking. And then you get in front of a girl and you say and do stupid shit. And I've talked to girls that in a coaching like sense, not just to consider like my girlfriend or which somebody mentioned that. Yes, I am having a good time. Thank you very much. I always am, by the way. This is how it is. Always having a good time. Yeah. But you know, I see like her peers and what she gets in her DMs, even though she's not responding to those, like the unattractive shit that guys are putting out there. You guys aren't the only ones. You're not special. Okay. If you're like, I'm red pill, I'm manosphere, you're not special anymore. This is all mainstream to a degree now, but just divisively. You know, Fresh and Fit has a pretty damn good presence out there, right? Kevin Samuels had a pretty good, pretty Andrew Tate had a pretty mainstream presence out there. And so from that, people were, you know, looking into other stuff. You're not the only dude who's gone to the internet to try to figure out dating advice. And then these dudes who are non-experts, who just know how to deliver maybe on the internet to other non-experts, send these messages and then you're repeating and doing behaviors and it's just unattractive. I've had this happen actually twice. I've had girls who were attractive, young, fitting like the list for a guy's red pill fantasy, but they were virgins. I've had this happen twice now. Um, if you're listening, my two clients, don't be mad at me. But of course, nobody knows who you are, so it doesn't fucking matter. They were virgins, right? And they were hot. They were good looking. They were attractive. There wasn't anything like unattractive about them. They were young and they wanted to have more of a good, like traditional commitment. They saw that a lot of this sexual marketplace stuff and the thoughterry and the stuff that women are doing is a recipe for disaster. And they wanted to find like a good dude and, you know, kind of, you know, have that boyfriend situation or whatever. They were willing to date older, you know, to get that too, right? Not a guy who's 21 who doesn't know anything about his life, but a guy who's maybe in his late 20s, early 30s or whatever, you know, fuck, some one of them didn't care. She would go with somebody in his 40s, wouldn't matter. As long, I mean, you would think this would be like easy for them to find a guy. It wasn't. Why wasn't it? Well, because they would take out the guys that they would find would expect them to have sex before 3 dates because that was a rule. Of where they get that rule from, the manosphere. Because some idiots like, it's just your turn. She's not yours, right? And then misinterpreting why that phrase even exists. Some idiots like, she doesn't, you know, it's 1 to 3 dates. If she's not touching your dick, then it's not genuine desire, you know? Like, really? And it's like they were running into that and into all of this bullshit. And these girls were fitting the magical list that nobody ever fits in. Like girls don't fit in these lists. Most of the girls who come to me for coaching don't fit that list. And that's okay too. You know, it is what it is. But yeah, they struggled. They actually had a hard time. And they were willing to have sex with a guy, but they just expected to be in a commitment for a while and all that stuff. And you know how many guys, because of bad advice on the internet, would just fuck that up? I don't know about you guys, but I mean, if I was, you know, if a girl was a virgin, of not again, not somebody who already railed through a bunch of guys, but somebody who was a virgin, and if you guys were more commitment minded, which most guys are, let's face it, you know what I mean? It's like, who wouldn't want that and to build a family with that and all that, right? I mean, there's tons of guys of high value, high income, good families, take care of themselves that would want that. But these women, they struggle. Anyways, that's you see the unattractive shit. More and more guys are just unattractive, and they're getting this unattractive information from losers on the internet, and of course, Twitter, Instagram, Reels, TikTok, watching 2-minute videos, this, that, and the other. And if you start paying attention, you'll notice the lack of game and the unattractive bullshit with the counter feminist narrative. And then, of course, you have the feminist narrative on top of it. And by the way, you guys are all just playing into feminism with this. When you guys are unattractive because you're following your favorite content creator and you're acting weird around people now because you're so red pilled that it affects how you act socially around people. And you have a negative bias with everything, negative shit that you think about women all the time, because because a woman doesn't fulfill your fantasy of how you thought she should be when you were blue pilled. Now you got all these negative opinions about women, right? And you bring that shit. You're not more alpha. You're not more attractive. You just bring your negative bias to your dates and you guys fail. I see it all the time. Or you guys get retroactively jealous for no reason. I'm not talking for a reason, but for no reason. Or you get over protective in your boundaries, or try to do dumb shit like, you start lying to girls about your level of commitment, trying to spin plates and, cheating and then wondering why you get broken up with, and like all this toxic shit that happens because you guys are dumb and how you're following it. No offense. I mean, you may not be stupid by IQ, but you're dumb in your decisions. And I've done dumb things in my life, so I'm not judging you. I'm just telling you what it is. And so that's what it is, man. And so you guys are following the wrong people who are not experts, and it's fucking you up. It's making you unattractive. It's making you show up unattractive to women because you're so busy overanalyzing through your negative bias. And you think you're right. That's the sad thing. The best example was that stupid line crap because it was just so illustrative, you know, was the line and the body language stuff when I did that video. That's this one of the best examples. Why? Because it's so blatantly obvious how fucking incompetent and unknowledgeable these guys were who were trying to put that information out. It was almost like frustrating because they were so sure of themselves. Well, in a more complex sense, take that and times it by a whole bunch of things. That's your guys' game. That's your guys' pickup abilities. That's your guys' abilities to attract a girl. That's your guys' ability to setting frame and setting boundary. That's your guys' abilities to continuing and keeping that attraction long term, for having just enough dread so she wants to earn you every day, but not too much dread where she, wants to kick you to the curb. Like all of these things, your game suffers because you're not competent, because you're busy entertaining yourself and consuming bullshit content that makes you feel better rather than stuff that challenges you. And so I'm going to be more vocal about that. Again, I don't talk about people as much because it's low brow conversation, and and I want to give every person a chance to improve themselves, to include content creators who are stupid. So if there's content creators out there that suck and aren't providing value, I don't necessarily want to just talk about people and make it harder for them to, what I mean, recover from that. I'd rather they become better so that they're not harming men versus the other way around. So that's just how I look at that. But anyways, so that's it. And so, you're going to see a lot more of I'm leaving the manosphere, or the land manosphere sucks, or it's a mano swamp, or red pill, this is terrible. You know what I mean? And you're going to see a lot of that kind of stuff. And they're going to see more of that. And you're going to see more incompetence. Um, oof. I'm going to have to put him a timeout. There we go. And so you're going to see more of that stuff. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I don't know who the hell Buttfinger is. Butt fudger. Like I don't know what the hell that is. I I don't know, you guys. I just accidentally clicked on that. But anyway, I had to click on that one. Yeah, Happy New Year to you, my man. So, anyways, let's make it a good year. All right. Let's not waste our time with bullshit. Let's start turning to experts for advice and not, just entertainers or grifters. All right. And so, as far as where I stand, though, my stance is I'm who I am, and it's independent of any pill. It's independent of any sphere or internet club, men's club. Okay. I work with individuals. When I think somebody has value and is a good person that I like to work with, that's how I work with people. I don't care if they're considering themselves red pill or not. I don't care if they consider themselves in the manosphere or not. I'm doing rule zero because I like everybody that's there on the panel and I like the shit we talk about, and I like to support those guys too. So that's why I do it. It's not because I have to have a red pill brand and I'm trying to brand myself as anything. I'm just who I am. I don't have to make a bold statement about leaving a space or staying in a space because I was never really consider myself in a space to begin with. You know, I don't, I just try to surround myself with people that have value. And if somebody else's opinion is that that person that I associated with doesn't have value, I that's your opinion. That's not my opinion, and I expect that my opinion will be respected as much as I respect theirs. I don't get into beefs and feuds and all that bullshit because I don't care about it. My business isn't helping you guys with what I know how to help you with, right? With what my expertise is in. And that'll never go away. You know, no matter what censorship happens, no matter what goofy stuff happens in the space, I'm and thank you. I don't know who Bud Fudger is. I'm not even looking at the chat right now, but thank you. I'm glad that I've been helpful to you. I appreciate that. And so and yeah, and then thanks, man. And that's what I'm going to continue to do. I'm going to continue to do good things for you guys. I may, out of comedy, dick around a little more than maybe I should on Twitter, but I do that really because it's funny. I kind of, funny stuff, but I'm still not divisive over there. I'm not doing what a lot of these people are doing. And so when you guys come here the rest of the year, whether it's, you know getting on, that's another thing, get on my newsletter, get on my email list, because that was one thing I wanted to mention before I close is AI. The new thing, no, my Twitter's pretty funny, to be honest. So the new thing right now is AI. With AI, you're going to see a lot more of this because now they don't even need to put in the effort to create the content. Somebody can just show up and use an AI programming and just puke out, refurbished Manosphere and Red Pill content. You know what I mean? I joked around with Rolo that someone's going to take his Rational Mail book and throw it through an AI thing and create a new book and just label it and then put their name on it or put some goofy alpha male cool guy name on it, right? And it's just regurgitated Rational Mail book. And that will happen. Probably, jokes aside, that shit will probably happen, you know? And so I just spotted this one. Hey, Val, I like Rob, man. I don't know him other than the internet, but I like that guy, man. He's pretty cool. I would love to collab with that guy. He seems like a good dude, man. I actually like his personality from what I know about him on the, of course, I've never met him in person, but internet or whatever, but he seems like a good dude, man, to be honest. And I was helping support his channel, over on my other social media, trying to get him to 1,000 subscribers, And so, yeah, one thing I can promise you is that, I will not use AI to produce advice for you guys. I'm sure at some point my marketing guys might use AI to build like sales funnel stuff. That's a little different. I'm just transparent. I'm telling you how it is. But when my newsletter, everything that goes in there, I wrote. And I have a policy. If I ever have somebody write for my newsletter, they got to sign their name to it. even if it's just a first name or a handle, but sign something to it so you know whether it's coming from me or somebody else. Some of my stuff in my newsletter is chopped up from posts I've done in my communities, concealing the names. And my assistant Brittany will do that for me sometimes, to save me my time. But it's still things I wrote that goes in there, and I still, and that's what it is. It comes from me. So you're going to see spelling errors and grammatical errors and shit like that when I'm not careful enough because I did it. I wrote it. All right. Anything, if I put a course out, it's not AI material. It's not, it's not any of that stuff. It's you're getting me off and the advice that I can dispense in the most competent, expert way possible, the best way that I can. That's what's important. I need you guys to know that because you're going to see the next year or two, and it's going to continue to amp. Most of these guys, you're already seeing it now. Most of these guys, even in their Twitter accounts and all that stuff, it's bots that are writing it. It's AI writing it. They're not writing it. And so I'm choosing not to do that, to scale my stuff. I'm choosing that. I may find ways to chunk together and time manage, but when I do something, it's going to be from me and not from some other bullshit. And the reason why is because I'm an expert at what I do. And so not going to regurgitate just everybody else's content on my stuff, but that's what you're going to see more. And so how is that going to help you? How is regurgitated stuff going to help you with no differentiation between what applies to you, what doesn't, what's good, what's not? You're probably not, skilled enough to know the difference. Not trying to be an asshole, but you may not be skilled enough to really know whether something's helping you or not. And it may seem like not a big deal, but kind of is. And that's why you guys need to protect your minds a little bit more, protect your brain, okay? Protect what you consume. Because if it's garbage in, it's going to be garbage right out. And you need to protect yourself. Look at the experts. Look at people who actually have something to say. Don't just buy anybody's gumroad. Don't just buy anybody's into anyone's BS. And know when you're being over marketed to and getting bullshitted on, right? I do market and I don't shy away from marketing. I think it's important. I'm going to try to get better at marketing, but I'm honest with you guys about that. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Because I want you to get I respect your time and I respect your energy and your effort. And I want you to do well as I respect the money that you would spend if you're going to be in one of my programs. And so that being said, with that level of respect, I don't want to disrespect anybody in my audience from, by shortchanging you with bad advice or with, AI produced nonsense or just grifting off of other people's stuff. All right. And so that's it. That's all I got to say. Happy Wednesday. Let's make it a good new year. And, what else was I gonna do? I'm gonna block this guy. So that's it. I'm trying to think of any other questions, but there isn't any. So I won't talk about the Manosphere and Red Pill very often because I'm not really in it. I'm friends with people who are in it. I get associated with it sometimes. But even someone like Rich Cooper, for example, he's still going to be called Manosphere guy and Red Pill guy, even though he said he's not in it anymore and it's the Mano Swamp. I don't disagree with him, to be honest, but people are going to associate you how they're going to associate you. I'm just doing me, right? And I'm going to collaborate with people who I think are good to collaborate with for whatever reason I think. You know what I'm saying? And so that's it. All right. You guys have a good week and we'll talk next time I'm on. Peace out. Oh yeah. Subscribe though. Subscribe to my newsletter. All right. And also watch my cheating video and subscribe to that channel. With all you guys on this thing today, I should have a whole bunch of more people on my new channel. Okay. So you guys, if you haven't subscribed over there, please do. I got to reach 1,000 here. And I want to produce another video over there. Apex Center Game is a new channel. Links in the description. So, all right, guys. You have a good one. Till next